Hi everyone, Erock Tenor here. Just a quick note on today's episode. You're going to notice that my microphone quality goes from bad to good, back to bad, and back and forth. I messed up the settings on some new software that we're using. I have it all fixed up for next time. I apologize. I hope it isn't too distracting. Either way, I hope you enjoy today's episode.
Hello, and welcome to the Pixel Professor podcast, where we take an academic deep dive into the cultural and artistic phenomenon that is video games. It is July 24th, Pioneer Day, 2024.
Pie and Beer Day.
Pie and Beer Day. Does anyone else anybody else but the people in like Arizona, Idaho, etc. even know about Pioneer Day? Probably not.
I don't think so.
Either way.
They certainly don't get the day off.
They certainly don't. Neither do we, because we love video games, and we're going to be here telling you about them in an exciting way that is going to blow your mind. Because, and as well as the fact that I am Erock Tenor, and I am joined by my co-host,
E-Rock Swifter.
E-Rocks? You're a swifter E-Rock than the E-Rock Tenor. Of course
That's
you are.
what everyone tells me.
That's what everyone says. Swift, are you? First of all, how are you doing today?
Excellent.
Excellent. Celebrating your day off?
Oh, yeah. How about you?
Every day's a day off, at least for now, until it's not. But I'm doing great. What are you playing? What games are you playing? What's your game of choice? On this day.
Deep Rock Galactic.
Dang, you're still in that. You're still grinding away at Deep Rock Galactic.
There's so many things to unlock.
I'm
pretty excited about No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky.
A new No Man's Sky would be great too, but No Man's Sky. Have you tried it yet with the new update?
A little bit, but not much.
Is it as cool as everyone says? What you've seen?
It seems like it, yeah.
Yeah, we gotta try that.
The water and everything. Yeah, it just seems pretty cool.
I have not checked it out yet. I got it updated and downloaded. Actually, no, we have to see if Game Pass actually did the whole update thing. Because last time we tried to play it together, we didn't have the update, and you did. Because you're special. Because you're Swifter.
That is true. Yep.
Swifter to get updates. Well, that's no fair. Okay, well, we need to try that one.
Let's try it. What have you been playing these days?
I am totally into, besides the fact that I'm still filming Project Zomboid 100 Days. This morning, Mav and I got up to day 69, so we're almost there, like 31 days away from the end.
So close.
Of this, we're going to do more after this, but the first 100 days, we're almost there. And He's very patient with me. Mostly it's just him rolling his eyes and sighing a lot. Like if I did a compilation edit of the number of times he has to go, ugh. Like, there's lots of those.
Are you filming your faces?
No. Dang it. Opportunity missed.
Because that would be a pretty fun supercut.
That would be funny. That being said, the other game that I'm playing on my own that I can't seem to get enough of is Grounded. I played it in early access and loved it. But it has a few, little early access-y things. And now that it's done, it is just... The crafting is amazing. Like, did you watch Honey, I Shrunk the Kids as a kid?
Yes, that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah, my family loved that movie growing up, and we watched it many times. And, of course, all dreamed about that being an actual thing, that we could go and live in our bed. This is your opportunity, and you can... But the one thing they don't do in the movie that you can do in this is, like, collect grass and acorns and all these different little materials in the backyard and build yourself, like, a miniature mansion. And because the crafting is just so cool. It's really fun. So anyway,
that sounds very cool.
I'm all in on Grounded. It's one that we may want to review because it really brings a lot of really interesting mechanics together, and it's worth. The art is wonderful. It's cartoony, but it's just and spiders as a miniature person in your backyard are the most like I'm not a big. Do you like horror games? Do you enjoy playing horror games?
Not particularly. Or the other thing that it sounded like you said.
Horror games. And I'm not a big fan, but I played a few in my day. That being said, this doesn't look like it should be a horror game, but I'm not sure there is anything more scarier than being about the size of a small ant and facing a wolf spider.
That's fair.
I don't like being the size of the human that I am right now facing a wolf spider.
Yeah.
When it is several times bigger than you,
Gross.
Whatever you imagine that might be, it's that gross or worse. It's just really bad. So anyway, but okay. So speaking of games, and when I was a kid, this is turning into a segue-ish. We have decided that one of the things that we're going to do in order to sort of continue our sort of survey of the history of video games, is to go back and play a bunch of them together. And we found some places that we can do that, like some emulators or websites that actually have emulators of old games. And there's gonna be a lot that we missed. So this is and of course, there's lots of opportunities to go back and sort of circle around and redo things. But today, to start out with, we are going to start with Atari. Atari in like the late 70s and early 80s, and play a few of the sort of big hits from that time period, starting with Pong, right? So we won't get too bogged down in the history. There's going to be lots of articles to read in the group chat. In the group chat? No, in the notes to the show that you should check out if you're interested in this stuff. I love video game history. I am currently reading and can't stop reading The Ultimate History of Video Games by Stephen L. Kent. If you have not read this,
nice.
If you're it's a lot about the business and stuff of games, and he was in the video game industry and also was a writer for a long time, and reporter in the video game industry. There's a volume 2 of this. This goes to like 2001-ish, and
nice.
And now I'm currently reading volume 2. And anyway, so a few key figures. First, there are games before 1972, which is kind of where we're starting. There are game companies before Atari, but Atari is kind of recognized as the first big video game company in terms of making it into this massive deal. It becomes a much more massive multi-billion-dollar industry later, but the OG Atari console, we're actually going to go back to like Atari arcade games, were among what helped launch the video game craze in the United States. So, first game being Pong. Had you played Pong like as a youngster on a Pong machine or like an arcade or on an Atari or anything like that?
I don't think I ever did.
So I can't remember. I know that I played it on. We had an Atari 2600 as a kid. That was the first game console that my family owned, and with the actual paddles that were basically just for Pong or tennis style, or otherwise known as Pong style games. And Pong. So Nolan Bushnell. He's the guy who founded Atari. He is this really crazy maverick, sort of mad scientist genius of a human. Recently passed away. But he, in the early 1970s, goes out to Silicon Valley, which is not Silicon Valley. It's just a bunch of like ranches and stuff, and like plum groves or something like that. I don't know. It's not what it ends up becoming. Him and Atari are what helped make it into what it becomes. And long story short, he and his friend Alan Alcorn is one of the OG Atari people. He plays this ping pong game on the Magnavox Odyssey, which is probably the first console, but it's kind of complicated. Magnavox Odyssey is actually the console that I played. I got this wrong, I think, on a previous podcast. It was the Magnavox Odyssey that I played with my grandmother when I was little, because they had it. And it's kind of the OG console. And it actually came with, and this Atari did some of this too later, came with these mats that you would stick on the TV. And then, you would play the game behind the mats, so it could make it look like this sort of high-res image. And then you put that on your TV, and then you would play around the overlay. So that's what the Magnavox Odyssey had. But he plays this ping pong game, and then tells his friend, Alan Alcorn. A lot of the early game designers weren't necessarily programmers; they were engineers. So he gives Alan Alcorn this task to make a ping pong-like game, and he ends up creating Pong. And then when he shows it to his friend, Nolan Bushnell, and the co-founder of Atari, Ted Dabney, when he shows it to those two guys, they're like, wait, this game's actually really wonderful. And part of it is a lot of early games were hard, and Pong can get kind of hard, but Pong was so simple, and it has like there's no rules to really learn. It's a ball and two paddles hitting that one, and you know instantly what's supposed to. There's actually social experiments that are done later with Pong that are kind of interesting, and like people who had never heard of it just put it in their hands and they know exactly what to do with it from the instant you give it to them, and they'll start playing it. So it instantly draws you in to play this game that is Pong. And again, I played it on the Atari. I can't remember. It's the initial. They initially launched it in arcade form, and then they actually made them like a Pong device, like a home Pong machine that was just two paddles, and you plugged it into your TV. And he even Alan Alcord figured out a way to use the TV's sounds for sound effects. Like he didn't. Nobody was doing any of that kind of stuff. Like games before then often didn't even have sound effects or music or anything. So he figured out some rudimentary sound effects that you'll hear in the game. And it became massive in bars. Like one of the first, because like you could hold a beer in one hand and the paddle in the other, and just play in a semi-inebriated or very, very much inebriated state. Nolan Bushnell used to say you'd hear of couples that like met each other playing Pong, and it becomes a massive thing. We'll talk more about that in a second, but we have to play it first.
Cool.
Are you ready to play some Pong?
I am so ready to play Pong. I do think that the challenge and ability balance is going to be interesting to look at.
It sure feels like you're making excuses already.
I was more making excuses for you.
Oh, well, that might be a little foolish too, because this whole remote control thing is a little tricky. So,
you're asking for ability to control my screen. That's a dangerous thing to give you. I'm switching over here. Hopefully we'll get the audio right. We might have to do some post stuff because this gets a little loud and obnoxious on some of these emulator things. Oh, and see who won the last time. Note that I'm on the right side here. Is it working? Is your paddle working?
Yep.
You know,
the cool thing is that I can also break your paddle, so you can't do anything.
So that's why it wasn't working. If you hold my buttons, you better not do that in real life. We got to show the public how this goes here. Okay, let me make sure.
All right, let's do this. Bring it on.
Okay, are we in full screen? We are in full screen. Okay, so I'm going to press 2, and this will start. Here we go. You ready? 0 zeros. So there's one of the rudimentary sound effects.
I hit it. Come on.
No. How's it going over there, Swift? Challenge and ability.
So good.
So you have to anticipate where it's going. And I remember with the paddles, depending on how sensitive they were, it was really annoying. You had to dang it! You had to anticipate it well in advance. Sometimes you had to start your journey up the screen very early. That seemed like a pretty egregious miss. Oh, that was better. Good job. I'm winning 3-1. Just for those who are listening. Oh, now I'm not.
3.
I'm still winning though. You overcorrected there. 5-2, 5-2, 5-2.
Is it possible to cheat in Pong?
I don't.
You gotta be cheating.
That's the thing. How could you cheat? It's so simple. I'm not touching.
I'm asking myself too.
If you're trying to imply that maybe I'm touching your controls, I am certainly not doing that either. Okay, here we go. There we go. I'm winning 7-2 by 8-2.
2-8.
Dude, you beat badly. Winner 9-2.
If we're playing golf rules,
we are not playing golf rules. We are playing this video game's rules. Did you push start? Okay. You didn't even tell me we were starting again. Okay, one more.
Well, part of the game of Pong is being ready for anything.
So, 1-1. I'm winning now. So one of the things that happened, because this is just so obviously just a ping pong game, is after this came out, Magnavox, what's his name? Baer, was Baer. They sued Atari for ripping off their ping pong game, and they ended up settling outside of court, which Bushnell was like the king of, man.
Wait, but so hold on. Why did they have rights to ping pong?
I don't. It was the game was similar enough. I think that they made
But
basically.
why was
And
Magna like? Are we talking a video game ping pong or like
yes,
ping pong?
Magnavox for their system had a ping pong game, and Bushnell basically he learned the story. I don't know how that he had told his buddy to make the game after watching the ping pong game, and so
Oh.
one of the many lawsuits. But they settled outside of court, and then this inspired a thing. I really beat you bad that time, 9-2.
Hey, you know
Come on.
what? It was the exact same score.
Oh well, but I feel like you didn't even put up a fight that time. But anyway, so let me switch back here. So now that I've thoroughly destroyed you,
This is going well so far. Oh, there we go. We're back. We back.
We are
So anyway,
back.
there's Pong for you, the OG hit, and so huge arcade hit. Then they made the specific like machine that was the Pong machine, and then in what was it 1976. Jerry Lawson, who is a person who deserves more credit in the video game world than he gets, African American video game designer who was one of very few African Americans in the video game industry, especially in that time. And he thought of the idea of basically using 8-track tapes as his inspiration, of using cartridges to put not just having a certain like the Odyssey had a certain number of games wired into the console, and so Lawson has this idea of using cartridges. So they create his company creates the Fairchild Channel F. Not the best name for a console, but it's the first one that uses the cartridges, and then from then on, everybody has to use cartridges. So then Atari uses cartridges, and they make a Pong cartridge, and that's one of their initial big sellers. And then it goes on to inspire all kinds of games. Again, Pong-style games, like they turn every kind of game possible into like a Pong-style game. Like when you think of even like there are hockey games that work like you can use the paddle for that function kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
and then like a bajillion different Olympic style like tennis games and baseball games, and I'll use the paddle like that. Then one of the big ones that turns into a really big cultural phenomenon is Breakout, which we're not going to play today, but you should play. And it's still an app that you can get. Like there are so many different kinds of Breakout games where you launch a ball up into like a wall of bricks, and then you move the paddle along the bottom to keep hitting the ball up into the bricks. So lots of games inspired by Pong. It seems really, really simple, but it's still like when you're just picking up your phone to play a game. I have 2 or 3 different Breakout style games on my phone that I just are fun to sort of pick up and play. So it inspires a bunch of different ones. Any
You
thoughts
know who
on Pong?
you know who created Breakout?
I do. I do. Well, it's complicated. I know who was assigned. So Breakout was assigned to Steve Jobs, who was the 40th employee or something at Atari, and he like Steve Jobs was wanting to do. He was assigned to do Breakout, and then he went to India or something on this retreat. And so what often happened,
Yep.
and then he comes back and he's probably way behind deadline. But so the guy they brought in to help him was Steve Wozniak, his buddy. And so Steve Wozniak is the one who kind of actually, this is the story of Steve Jobs, right? And it's it's oversimplified, but in a lot of cases, it was Wozniak who stepped in, did the job of inventing and creating, and then Steve Jobs going out and saying, "Look at this thing that I did, everybody." But Woz is the one who actually made the game, and then it also became a huge hit on the Atari and in arcades.
I think the coolest thing about Pong is that when they tried to copyright it, they couldn't because it didn't contain a minimum amount of graphic or pictorial authorship.
When it's 2 white lines and a white dot, there's not a whole
Yeah.
lot to patent or copyright. Huh. So
But that was no, that was sorry, I said Pong, but I meant Breakout.
Breakout. Well, but it's
And
similar situation, right?
our good friend Ruth Bader Ginsburg begged to differ and said, actually, no, you can copyright that game.
A
But it's
hero.
gonna, as we go through to more complicated games down the road,
Yes.
the fact like we have come a long way from the days of actually that's you didn't actually do enough to make a game to like these super 3D immersive amazing
Gesamtkunstwerk things.
exactly
Like to
exactly
think, I mean, so what? This is 50 years ago. That's a decent amount of time, half a century. But to think what we're doing now, and also to think from a gaming mechanics perspective, that there's still something ridiculously addicting about playing Pong. Like just that thing is just so easy to understand, so easy to pick up and play. There's something to that, and it gets harder as you go through the beers and can see less and less. There's a natural bit of that. One of the fun stories, one of the anecdotal stories about that. So it was the Andy Cap bar. I can't remember the full. Andy Cap was an old like cartoon, like a Sunday morning cartoon kind of thing.
yeah
Newspaper. Alan Alcorn, the bar where they first installed it was called the Andy Cap Bar and Tavern or something like that. And Alan Alcorn was called over to fix the machine. And when he went to fix it and opened the bottom of it to fix it, it was so stuffed full of quarters that it had jammed up the mechanism because it was so popular. So like he like traded out the tray for like a milk carton or something deeper that would hold more. Like
oh
they're like
man
rudimentary
that's awesome
coin capturing device to get to Pong working. So there you go. Pong.
that's amazing
Pong, we could say, is also an inspiration in terms of like a moving across the bottom of the screen paddle style thing, and this game worked with that on the console. And then a simple shooting device. Space Invaders is the next game that we're going to play.
oh.
Space Invaders is a 1978 arcade game, and this one was developed by Taito, Taito, massive game company in Japan. And we're going to see so much of the way games move back and forth is from Japan to the United States. Usually more that direction than the other direction, but it does happen both ways. And we'll also find many times that what works in Japan doesn't work in the United States, and vice versa. But that being said, Space Invaders was massive in Japan to the point that they would take stores and gut them, for example, and turn them into like invasion centers. And then they just fill it with arcade cabinets that just had Space Invaders. And it's inspired so many games since then. The designer is Tomohiro Nishikado, like a legend in the video game design. He had his own version of Breakout, et cetera, gunfight, and then releases the cartridge of Space Invaders on the Atari 2600 in 1980. And that ends up being, I think it's their second highest selling video game? No, I think it's Pitfall. Anyway, one of their highest sellers. It's the first blockbuster video game in history. Pong is often considered sort of the first to sort of have a decent size worldwide showing. Space Invaders is the first hit. And then today, the last game we will play is the first sort of mega hit of the. And mega is, of course, compared to now, nothing compared to now. But okay, and so this has so much that's cool about it. We talked about Space Invaders a little bit because Nishikado's design of this game. It's really the first game in the arcade version, in particular, to have music, and he uses that little noise chip. Right, that's there just to do beeps and boops and maybe limited sound effects through that bum, 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 bum. That's all the music is. But it all gets faster and faster and faster. It's the first game designed to like never end. There's no beating it. It just gets faster and faster and faster. And there's like a anyway. There's championship competitions to see. It is a worldwide phenomenon. So.
Let's play it.
I think we should show the world what this is. We're using this,
now,
what's the free80sarcade.com if you want to play these. They have so many cool old games.
How are you going to handle losing to me
Well,
in Space Invaders?
I think so far we've learned that you talk a big game. I don't know that
I'm just worried about
my well-being.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
how will you be able to handle it?
Let's see.
My question.
Let's see how I do.
Oh yeah.
Now this is the actual Atari version. So just so you can't make any excuses. One of us plays at a time, right? To do the two-player version. Actually, I don't know how to select the two-player version. Can we do the two-player version? I don't know. Either way, arrow keys move, spacebar fires, And I think I'm gonna let you go first. So we're gonna make this thing full screen. And just like you had to do old school, you have to push the reset button to start the game. So are you ready to do this?
Let's do
You
this.
ready to give it a try? You're first. I think you can.
I can't move.
I gave you control, didn't I? Oh, now you're moving. Look at
I'm
you
not
moving
moving.
down there. That's not
And
you?
then spacebar shoots. Okay, here we go. I got this.
There we're going. Oh, you gotta get the
I
dude.
gotta get. What do
Oh,
I
you
do?
gotta hit the thing
The
flying
purple
on the
dude?
top. That's the UFO. Ah, see, but you can't sacrifice. Oh,
Well,
yeah,
look who won.
well,
Oh wait,
no, I don't think it's doing 2 players, is it?
I can't tell.
I don't think it is because it's all green. You got 70 points, is what we just learned.
Well,
I don't think that's particularly impressive. I'm not a professional space invaders player. That being said,
it sure seems to want to.
all I
let us.
have to do is beat 70 points.
What was you had to beat the? You had to blow up the little guy.
Well, first
flying?
you just need to hit these. So you got these layers
Yeah.
of aliens, right?
I'm
And they
with you
get
so far.
and every time they go over, they come down a level.
Oh, I see.
See how they get faster and faster every time they come in, and they're trying to get you. And if I'm not gonna get that UFO. This is very loud. Is it very loud for you too?
It's pretty loud.
Good thing we can fix this in post. And see this guy on the bottom here. He presents the biggest threat to me. And you gotta blast off
Not
the
anymore.
bottom. He's gone. Ooh, can I get it? Can I get it? I gotta get the UFO thing. Oh man, I missed him. Oh,
How
see how it gets more and more stressful. Ooh, as you get more and more of it. Oh, I'm stressed. Oh, I got it. I beat level 1.
Dude.
And then it starts again.
Let's see.
And basically this will go in infinitum. Forever and ever. Oh, I wasn't watching you. I wasn't watching the game. I looked over. So, I did it again. So anyway, so this will go on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever until either you lose the game or one of us passes away.
Oh.
Do you want to try it again?
Well, yeah, definitely.
I think we'll just reset this bad boy and you should try again.
Come on.
Right, there you go.
Move.
Now
There
we're
we
going.
go.
Now we're going. All right. Now that you understand the game. So and the Atari version, unfortunately, we could
What?
switch to the arcade version. The arcade version has the music. The Atari version doesn't have that burn, 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 burn. The same music the arcade has. You're not doing well.
That is a matter of opinion.
You should move when the.
I tried moving.
You have to move. It is hard because there is the delay. But you beat your score.
Hey,
You
I beat my
got
score.
105 instead of 70.
70. Yeah,
And
that's
you're playing over however many. How far away am I? Like thousands. I'm very many hundreds of miles away from you, and you're playing Space Invaders on my computer. Which, let's be honest, that's pretty cool.
is how Space Invaders was meant to be played.
I don't know about that, but okay. So Space Invaders, there it is. Let me switch this back over.
I would call that the original Souls-like.
The original Souls-like? What are you're making a joke that I don't understand.
Souls-like games.
You mean like roguelike
Dark
games?
Souls?
Oh, Dark
No, no, no.
Souls. Okay, I see. Yes. Okay.
Because the definition of a Souls-like game is it's a subgenre of action role-playing games known for high levels of difficulty and emphasis on environmental storytelling. High levels of difficulty,
Yes. It does have a high level of
environmental
difficulty.
storytelling, sort of.
Sort of. I mean, the environment does
More than Pong.
tell us. Yeah, I'd say so. Like we definitely are defending something from aliens, right? We're being invaded by space people, and our first
High
reaction is
difficulty.
going to be to jump in a ship and blow them up.
Sparsity of save points.
Yeah, there are no save points.
Giving information to the player through indirect environmental storytelling.
I think you could make the case that Space Invaders is the original inspiration for all shooters. I mean, it's basically what it is, right? It's just a shooter. You don't move up and down, but you do move and shoot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not 3D, but it could be. Is that a thing? Has anyone made a 3D Space Invaders game? Let's go. Like where you were like, someone needs to make a modern version of that. That'd be really, really cool. But it does inspire a lot of. So you've got a lot of Pong clones out there,
Yeah.
and there's also a bajillion Space Invaders clones. And in these early Wild Wild West days of arcades and stuff, like every console has to have a game like these uber popular games in the arcades. So
Yeah.
even though they can't call them Space Invaders, they'll make a game that looks and feels just like it. But even bigger games that are made by the same companies, or at least sort of even though Space Engineers was I keep saying Space Engineers, Space Invaders, because you play Space Engineers. Space Invaders was made by Taito. It was also a cartridge on the Atari. So other Atari games like Asteroids and Defender are all sort of moving that idea of Space Invaders further into more complicated. Like Asteroids is kind of based on Space Wars and Space Invaders put together. Like have you ever played Asteroids? A little triangular ship floating around and shooting and spinning, and I would always lose control and start going too fast and crash into stuff. So yes, I think you could say most of those kinds of games are inspired by Space. And there's a reason why it was such a huge
Space
hit.
Invaders. Yeah.
Space Invaders was huge. Yeah. Okay. So
awesome.
You could also make the case in some ways, which we might make, that so this next game, if we're going sort of hit by hit, and we're going late 70s, mid 70s to early 80s, and again, there are so many games that we're not playing that we should be, but this next one is the first video game mega hit, released in Japan. Developed and designed by Toru Iwatani, and released in Japan under the name Puck-Man, because he looks like he was shaped like a puck with a piece removed. But for whatever reason, the Japanese were worried that the Americans might be clever with the word Puck-Man, and decided that maybe that wasn't I don't know if you can imagine any ways that Americans might be clever with that name. I'm sure you can. But they were worried.
They definitely named it after the most popular sport in America at the time. Hockey.
Yeah, hockey. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So they decided to call him Pac-Man in the United States. Even though the designer said it was like based on a pizza with a slice taken out, and it was designed of Pac-Man. They still called it Puck-Man. And then changed it to Pac-Man. Now, in the United States, this game, massive. #1 seller for Atari on cartridges. The arcades go crazy, goes all over the place, and turns into this huge, huge, huge hit. And creates a whole genre of game called maze games. So you've got Pong games, you've got space shoot-'em-ups, turns into sort of and how easy is that genre to say, space shoot-'em-ups. And then you've also got this whole new genre that comes out of maze games. And Pac-Man is a huge hit. In the United States, it's particularly popular with women. It's hard to tell whether or not that was actually an initial intent. Some early marketers of games in the United States, I think, claim that, oh yeah, we brought it here because we knew it was going to be popular with women. I don't know if that's actually the case, but it did end up being extremely popular with women, even though in Japanese it was popular in Japan it was popular with everybody. So I think we need to play a little Pac-Man. Yes.
Let's play some Pac-Man.
So let's see if I can get this one to work. I'm trying to minimize the amount of time this takes every time.
Okay, so the main thing is I can never remember the names of the ghosts. There's 4 ghosts, and all I can ever remember is 3 of them rhyme, and then the last one's name is Clyde. It's like something, 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 and Clyde. Okay, so either way, the controls are simple, arrow keys, right? And the space bar is like the cool thing about the old controller on the Atari. Did I ever use it? The old joystick on the Atari. It's just this little base with a stick coming up out of it and one button. So it was only ever a movement and a button, which actually some people started to develop blisters and cramps and stuff from holding that controller. It was not the most ergonomic thing, nor was it designed to be. Okay, so let's just make sure that all of our devices are doing what they need to be doing with this. I believe they are. Okay, we're gonna go full screen on this. You ready?
Let's do this.
Okay, so I'm gonna let you go first again. 1981 Atari. Here we go. Reset. You gotta go chomp on those. Go chomp on those
I
little
can't.
bits.
I can't.
That was not well done. Oh, I haven't approved your controlling the screen. Okay. Oh, darn it! You died again. Oh, I don't know what's going on. Okay, we're gonna reset it. Here we go. There you go. Ready?
Hold on. I
Okay.
need to get the controls down.
It's just arrow keys and spacebar.
Oh well, that's what I thought it was, but it's not letting me. It's not letting me do it.
You know, is it not? Ah, there we go. Oh, you don't go the direction of the ghosts. Go the other way. Go the other way.
Okay. Here's what we got to do.
What do we gotta do?
You got to do it on your computer, and then I will share
Okay,
my screen
okay.
for my computer.
Okay, well, yeah, okay, that's a good idea. Okay,
Let me give up remote control.
Okay, here we go. So now I'm going around here, and if I get that guy, then I can start getting the ghosts. See when you chomp on those like pills, but you don't. You got them all. Look at that, and then they all go back to their base in the middle, and they whoop. Ooh, ooh.
Whoa, it is.
Ooh.
These ghosts are like glitching all over the place.
Well, they're just they're not corporeal beings.
Seems a little bit unfair of them.
Yeah. Oh man, he was back. See, that's so when you eat the little cookie things in the corner, they turn into like less corporeal beings, and then you can eat them, like you do.
Oh, I see.
Oh dear. Yeah. Oh. Anyway.
Ghosts.
So there's me playing it. I guess I'll lose all my lives here. My lives? I'll lose my lives. Let's see how far I can go. And timing this part right is the tricky part. And the goal is to eat all the little pill things that are spread out around the maze. And when you get them all, you pass the level. And you can go on to the next level. Now, if I recall, the maze doesn't actually change. It's just this every time, but a little faster.
Interesting.
I might be wrong. Let's see.
And you have a certain number of lives, right?
Yes, I only have one left. See the dot there on the bottom? That shows how many lives I have. And no! See, get that last one's tricky, because I think they know.
It's weird that the ghosts don't like to be eaten.
I think that's weird too. Is that see? New level. Boom. Look at me and my new, and it's the same map and everything.
You know what? I'm on board.
You're on board with Pac-Man?
Yeah.
You like it?
It's pretty cool.
So Pac-Man, it was, again, huge hit. Now, here's the thing. Here's one of my favorite things about Pac-Man. So Pac-Man, again, massive hit in arcades and cartridges. Lots of clones out there. So these guys, Doug McRae, John Tilko, and Kevin Curran, I hope I'm saying their names right. They're all guys at MIT. Well, I believe two out of the three of them are MIT guys. And they find a way to start like making money off of their friends at MIT by installing arcades and stuff into their basically giving video games to their roommates and charging them quarters to play them or dimes or whatever. And they start making some really good money and like basically pay for tuition that way. One of them, they start to realize the game that they're playing the most is called Missile Command, and we're not going to put that one today, which we should though. It's a great game. Missile Command. And they realize that the problem with Missile Command is once you kind of figure it out, like the patterns and everything else, like it sort of runs out of continued playability. So they create a mod kit, like a circuit board that you can plug in that changes the graphics, that adds other like story elements to the game and makes it more of a continued flow state and keeps the challengeability thing synced up. Like it keeps you moving through, making it harder and harder. What's interesting is, so again, these are MIT kids. They decide to drop out of MIT and hired, they start making more and more of these mod cartridges and selling them to arcades because arcades are having the same issue. Like people stop playing their games because they stop being hard. And by using these mod kits, these arcades realize they can make more money. So they start making good money. So Atari sues these guys And I think what did they name their company? They named it General Computer Corporation. Really clever name. They sell in their early 20s, and they're just pumped to be like recognized. They're so excited they made big old bad Atari angry. And so Atari and then what's fun about Nolan Bushnell is he meets them, realizes how crazy talented they are, and basically settles with them out of court. And part of the conditions of the settlement is that they go and work for Atari. So he hires them to work for Atari, and the only stipulation is you can make mod kits, but you just have to get approval first. So one of the early mod kits that they make, what they had actually just made, but ended up not being able to use because of the lawsuit, was a mod kit for Pac-Man. But since they didn't have the rights to Pac-Man to get permission from Atari to do it, they had to go to Midway and create sort of a new game, even though it's not really a new game, it's just modded Pac-Man. But they had to do all kinds of things to like rename it, and they renamed it Miss Pac-Man. And in Miss Pac-Man, we've got early iterations of AI, like the ghosts don't just follow specific patterns that are easy to predict. They start following less predictable patterns. Every time you beat a level, you get a new maze and new challenges. It upgrades the graphics, and this is all from this mod kit that they made. And Miss Pac-Man becomes an even huger hit. And I think maybe we should try a little Miss Pac-Man
on the Atari. This is the Atari cartridge for Miss Pac-Man, and ooh, that's very loud.
Oh look, I have 1,000,000 points.
You have 1,000,000 points? Wow. Mm-hmm. And you can like get cherries and stuff in this one. I can't remember how you can get fruit that does cool things.
Yeah.
I think once you kill all the ghosts, you can get. Ooh! Okay, so I'm eating. Are you eating ghosts over there? Oh, there's the cherry.
My problem is this.
What's your problem?
The up and down buttons don't seem to work very well.
You have to time it. You have to hit them before you get to the maze thing. You have to get there before. See, like you have to hold it down before you get there, and time that right. These controls aren't. No, ooh! I got caught by a ghost. The question is, was it one of the three dudes or Clyde? Was it Clyde that got me? We'll never know. Oh, I just got caught again. So anyway, I wanted to beat a level so that you could. So I guess are you watching mine? Oh, and you can go in from like the other side. I guess you could do that in the other one too.
Oh yeah, but you
can like jump the map from one side to the other. Ooh.
Oh, that was a mistake. That was a strategic error on my part.
Ooh, I've been. Oh, I got cornered. I just died. Have you died yet?
I have. Well, I got eaten once.
How many? Well, I mean, but have you died? Have you?
No, I haven't.
Because I want to know how many points you get.
Man, I'm killing it.
I bet you are.
Now that I understand how the controls work.
But I need specifics to the killing it. And while you're doing that, what I will do is I will
3,310, but I'm not dead yet.
Oh, so you already beat me. It's not fair.
Guess what?
You could still
Level
host.
2.
What's up? Then you're really beating me. See, you could host tournaments with your friends of these games. You know, you could. These are still fun to play. And I'll tell you what. If you think it's like, oh, I'm going to play these old games because they're easy, it is not the case. They are not easy. So if you want to show your true gaming prowess, you will play these old games, which take a different level of like acuity and hand-eye coordination and stuff like that. But what I will say about this while you're continuing to play over there, we talked about the maze genre, right? Mm-hmm. We talked about how it changed the industry in terms of like mod kits and stuff like that, and how this is early days of thinking about flow states and keeping the game interesting long term, which of course is a massive part of the industry now. And then it inspires, really it's the first character-driven game. Pac-Man as a character becomes massively popular. Like we're talking Saturday morning cartoons and serial popular. He becomes a Saturday morning cartoon, which is the ultimate glorified version of a character, and inspires things like Donkey Kong and Frogger and Q*bert and Mario Brothers and all of those games that still hold some weight today because of their character. My family and I just watched Wreck-It Ralph.
Oh yeah,
which is one of my
Q*bert
favorite.
Was in there.
Q*bert's in there, man. Pac-Man's in there.
Yep.
And then there's a movie. Did you ever see the Pac-Man movie? I heard it wasn't very good. Did you see the Pac-Man movie? I think Jack Black's in Jack Black. Anyway, it was like
every movie.
He might be. The Mario Brothers movie is good. Maybe we need to do a Pixel Professor review on those
Oh, video game movies.
video game movies. But anyway, so and you could say also as well or along with games like Space Invaders, this also inspires the 3D maze first person shooter genre. Like when you did you ever play Wolfenstein 3D? So Wolfenstein 3D was
Tex Quest though.
It's very like Doom, which is that's based on, and Wolfenstein 3D are these 3D maze fighters, right? Where you're going through different hallways. They're not truly 3D; they're basically 3D, simulated 3D with tiles and stuff. But the idea is very similar to Pac-Man, just turned on its side. Right?
Yeah.
And there is actually a 3D version of Pac-Man or based on Pac-Man called Monster Maze that comes out in 1982. And games like Rally X is a racing game, but it plays kind of like a maze game. So a whole series and set of games that are similar and based on this whole idea of Pac-Man. So these are the first big hits. What's interesting, and this is where I think we'll pick up next time, is after this set of hits. Now, Bill Gates, we'll talk about this in the future, was really hesitant to get into the video game industry because, as best he could tell, there was like this 5-year cycle of lifts and crashes and lifts and crashes. And there's lots of different reasons why the video game industry crashed so many times. One of those times was actually maybe 1977-ish with Pong. So Pong was such a hit and so heavily saturated the market that they overproduced it, leads to a lull in demand. The game becomes less interesting and it crashed. So Space Invaders is often credited with this early golden age of games because it sort of rescued the world from the crash after Pong. And then Pac-Man happens. We're on a high. And then 1982 to 1983 is when the first massive, maybe the biggest crash in video games happens because of a game that I think we'll start with. Maybe we'll talk about this next time. An Atari game that ends up crashing the whole thing and needs to be rescued by a video game character in the mid 1980s and by a specific console. Because after Pac-Man and some of these games, like this one was huge. Other games that were huge are like Tank was huge, which we can maybe play a little bit as we fade out here into the sunset. We'll play some Tank. I'm thinking these games were big, but this is kind of the end of the party that is Atari. Like they do manage to stick around up until the 90s, and they even make several new consoles. And they also make computers. Their early days computers that are kind of based around similar ideas to early Apple computers. When they're young, they try to break into that market. But Atari, it's around this early 80 time period that Nolan Bushnell leaves, and they bring out new management, and everything sort of adapts and changes. And here's what famous restaurant chain did Nolan Bushnell leave to create? Would you have any guesses based around video games, arcades?
Pizza Hut.
You're actually not far.
Chuck E. Cheese.
Chuck E. Cheese. Nolan Bushnell, founder of Chuck E. Cheese. And so that's what he basically does when he leaves Atari. But really interesting. Imagine what it must have been like the whole stigma around video games that exists. And to this, I think today, Mavin's right. I think it's not as prominent as when we were kids, especially when I was a kid. Can you imagine being one of the first people to say, when someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, what do you do?" Like, I think nowadays, if you said, "Hey, I make video games for a living," people go, "Oh, that's really interesting. Cool. Tell me about that." And in 1972, I make video games. There's a reason why these guys were like imbalanced. They were crazy. Nolan Bushnell and his group, they were nuts. And Bushnell himself Atari was famous for being a place where it was just wild, wild west, and they were like having meetings in hot tubs, and it was not today it would not have been a particularly safe workplace for women either. Like, it was not the best place to work, but it was very indicative of what it was like to be on this sort of cutting edge, a maverick in an industry that there were no guarantees that it was going to take. There is nothing inevitable about here in 2024 us making a podcast about video games, right? In that there's after Atari has the big crash in 82, 83, it could have been over. There's no reason why it shouldn't have been over.
That's crazy.
So these early guys. That being said, it also proves that there is just something innately human about games and video games and the place they need to play in our lives and what they teach us, not just the games themselves. And we're talking about the business of the games and the games that were big. But even like they had to create characters that fit on these little like 8x8. I read somewhere like the sheer number of copies of Pac-Man that would have fit on like a floppy disk, like a 3.5-inch floppy disk. And now, of course, like you can play it online in an emulator, and it costs a website. The amount of space they have to dedicate to that game is minuscule.
That's impressive. These guys were, you might say, pioneers.
Pioneer Dave! Man, we didn't even do that on purpose. And not only that, Bushnell is from Utah.
He went to the University of Utah.
He did. One of the early, and continues to be an important, like a great place to go if you want to study video games. But early days, one of the first places to get some of the early advances in computers. Like they've been a hub. The University of Utah has been a hub for computer games and computer pioneering. Really,
yeah. They were one of the first universities that had the internet.
Yes,
was connected to the internet.
That's right.
There was like 3 or 4 hubs, and U of U was one of them.
Started at UCLA, didn't it? UCLA was anyway. That's what I think.
Sounds right.
Anyway, so there you go. Nolan Bushnell. We have people like Iwatani, Bushnell, Nishikado, can't forget him from Space Invaders. Even Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, early pioneers in video games, even though it's probably mostly Steve Wozniak. Ralph Baer, that's the name of the guy who was the Magnavox Audio. Audio Magnavox Odyssey. And Jerry Lawson, who deserves an immense amount of credit because that cartridge medium, to be honest, I kind of miss it. The cartridges were, and Nintendo clings to the cartridge medium far longer than everybody else because it's harder to copy and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there is something about these being able to hold on to these cartridges and own them, and have them, and the boxes and the manuals, and even just the sound. Those are our three games to highlight today. We're not always going to be able to do multiple games, and how we play these will change as we go through this survey of some of the most important video games in history, starting with Pong, Space Invaders, and Pac-Man, and Miss Pac-Man, /Pac-Man/Miss Pac-Man. So, here's what we'd love to hear from you. First of all, for any of you who grew up in this time period, were there games that you played in the late 70s, early 80s that we missed? I can already think of several that kind of break my heart not to be on here that we'll just have to play later. Like Pitfall, which was a huge hit on the Atari. Maybe my favorite game as a kid. That one, Defender, was the first game that I saved up money to buy, if I remember right. And that was kind of inspired by Space Invaders. I know we had Space Invaders as well when I was a kid. But what games are we missing? What are glaring, obvious ones that we should be talking about? What were your favorite games in the late 70s, early 80s? Any games you're intrigued by? Like and subscribe, share with your friends. And
whatever you do, don't beat my Space Invaders score. By the way, my Ms. Pac-Man, 7,830.
Oh my gosh! You just see when you're playing on your own computer, it's a whole different thing. I think it's a whole different thing. We need to set up a Pixel Professor
Pac-Man League.
Pac-Man because I've got this great website that sets up tournaments for you. Select the game, and you can invite people. We should do some early game tournaments. Like we could do single and double elimination, and these are the perfect games to do that. And you can post your scores. I like this idea a lot. We'll have to develop this idea. If you're interested in participating in that, let us know because that'd be really fun. Let us know. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking we do to go off into the sunset. We always invite people to play games.
Oh, yeah.
I think we should play some Tank on the way out. But I think I have this set up over here. And it's also on here, it's called Combat. And I know this is going to be tricky.
Oh, you just shot at me. How dare you? Oh, now we're moving. Get up. And one of the things you can do after you shoot is you can bend the ball or bend the bullet or whatever it is as it's going with the arrow keys. After you shoot, if you hit the arrow keys, they bend.
I think you're making that up.
You see how I bent that shot?
This is where David Beckham got his start.